but didn't start with a roar. It began with silence. Across the Pride Lands, the world seemed to hold its breath. The morning birdsong was hesitant. The herds at the waterholes lingered, listening. Even the wind felt unsure of its direction. A new freedom had settled over the land, and Simba was quickly learning that freedom could be far louder than any command. At Pride Rock, the council circle had grown wider, but not necessarily fuller. Some territories sent representatives. Others sent only their silence. 2. It wasn't an act of defiance, but one of distance. Simba no longer sat above them, but among them. He sensed their unease. "This isn't fear," he said, his voice a quiet murmur in the vast space. "It's uncertainty." An old lioness from the Western Plains finally spoke, her voice raspy with age and concern. "We followed the circle because it kept us safe, Simba. But now, every land chooses its own path. What happens when those paths collide?" From his perch, Rafiki tapped his staff once, the sound echoing sharply. "Then, wisdom," he declared, "must travel faster than pride." And far to the north, that collision was already happening. Two prides met at the banks of a shrinking river. Both were desperate. Both were certain the water was theirs by right. Tensions flared. Voices rose, and claws scraped against stone. The old, primal instincts for survival bubbled to the surface. But before the first drop of blood could be spilled, Kiara stepped between them. She didn't roar. She didn't issue a threat. Instead, she lay down. Their simple, unexpected gesture stunned them into a tense stillness. "This river doesn't belong to either of you," Kiara said, her voice clear and steady despite the danger. "It belongs to tomorrow. And tomorrow doesn't survive if today tears itself apart." One pride hesitated, then backed away. The other, seeing their rival relent, followed suit. When Kia finally rose, her legs trembled, not from fear, but from the heavy realization that next time, words alone might not be enough. That very night, she dispatched messengers across the lands. They carried not demands, but warnings. Kion, miles away, felt the change deep in his soul. The roar, once a purely instinctual force, now hesitated within him. It waited. It seemed to be asking for permission. Is this what it means to grow? He wondered aloud, seeking out Rafiki for guidance. Slew. The old mandrill listened patiently as Kion poured out his confusion. "The roar was born to protect the balance of the Pride Lands," Rafiki explained when he finished. "But balance is no longer still water, Kion. It is a moving current." "So what do I do when the roar isn't enough?" Kion asked, his voice filled with a frustration he couldn't hide. Rafiki's smile was tinged with sadness. "Then," he said softly, "you learn when not to use it." Meanwhile, Kivali, the former adversary, was facing a crisis of his own making. A severe drought was pushing his fractured lands to the absolute brink. His pride was restless, demanding action, quick, forceful, decisive action. The old fire of command stirred within him. He stood at the edge of the canyon, where the ash of his past mistakes still clung to the stones. He remembered the intoxicating power of commanding fear. And then, he chose a different path. "Remigrate," he announced. The pride stared at him. "Not by force," he added firmly. "By negotiation." They looked at him as if he had lost his mind. But they followed. The journey was brutal. It tested their pride, their patience, their loyalty. Some lions left the group, cursing his name. Some even returned. But weeks later, when they finally reached safer, more fertile ground, something completely unexpected happened. They were welcomed, not because Kivoli had demanded entry, but because he had asked. Word of his actions began to spread, not as the story of a new king, but as the tale of a former enemy who had chosen restraint over dominance. That word, that whisper of change, traveled farther than anyone could have imagined. It reached the deep echo. Far beneath the layers of stone and root, the ancient, malevolent presence stirred. It felt the world pulling apart, connections thinning and reforming, stretching beyond the old, familiar limits. This wasn't the simple division it had known before. This was complexity. Interesting, the entity murmured to itself, its tone not one of malice, but of cold, calculating intrigue. The deep echo had always fed on certainty. Uncertainty was rapidly fading from the world above. Back at Pride Rock, a storm broke without warning. It wasn't a violent tempest, but a heavy, soaking rain that saturated the land. Rivers swelled, familiar paths vanished, and the borders between territories blurred into muddy streams. Simba stood on the promontory, watching the water cascade down the ancient stone. And he felt something long held inside him finally loosen. For so long, he had believed that leadership meant holding everything together, maintaining control. Now, he was beginning to understand. True leadership meant trusting what you could no longer control. Nala came to stand beside him, her presence a quiet comfort. "You're quieter lately," she observed. "I'm listening," Simba replied, his gaze fixed on the changing landscape. That night, Simba dreamed. He didn't dream of his father or of Scar. He dreamed of a vast, open plain with no landmarks, no Pride Rock, no borders, just lions, moving freely. Sometimes they collided, sometimes they parted ways. And at the very center of it all, there was no throne. There were only choices when he woke. The dream didn't frighten him. It grounded him. At dawn, Simba made a decision. It was a choice that would ripple farther than any roar he could ever unleash. He sent word across the lands. It wasn't a summons. It was an invitation. An invitation to gather, not under his rule, but under a shared purpose. To speak of water and migration, of conflict and cooperation. To disagree openly. To leave freely. Simba's advisors warned him that this would weaken his authority. Simba simply accepted it. Because he had learned a crucial lesson. Authority was no longer the point. Weeks later, the gathering began. Lions arrived cautiously. Some brought guards, their eyes scanning the surroundings. Others came alone. Many stayed at the edges, poised to flee at the first sign of trouble. Simba addressed them all, his voice carrying not with the power of a king, but with the weight of shared experience. "The circle of life doesn't end if you walk away," he said, "but it suffers if we stop listening to one another." Long silence followed his words. Then, a single voice spoke up from the crowd. Then another. Soon, a flood of stories poured out, stories of scarcity and fear, of hope and unexpected alliances. Stories of mistakes made without guidance, and of victories earned through cooperation. The circle was no longer just a shape. It was a conversation. Deep below, in its stony prison, the ancient presence shifted uneasily. This was not the future it had anticipated. It saw division without hatred, unity without control, a world where power was something to be shared, not seized. For the first time in its impossibly long existence, the deep echo felt something entirely unfamiliar. It felt uncertainty. An uncertainty, it was beginning to realize, could not be so easily corrupted. Above ground, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the assembled prides. But these shadows no longer clung to the land with menace. They moved. They changed. They faded with the light. The The true reckoning had never been about fire or shadow. It was about what remained when neither one ruled, and the world was still deciding. The great gathering of prides ended not with a roar, but with a quiet departure. That alone felt historic. As the prides left, there was no single agreement, no binding oath carved into stone. Some were hopeful, others doubtful. A few were even afraid of what a world without rigid rule might become. Simba watched them go, feeling neither victory nor loss, only a profound sense of responsibility, too. The days that followed were calm but strained. This new era of cooperation required constant effort. Old disagreements surfaced quickly. Old rivalries didn't just vanish because they were spoken aloud. And beneath it all, something began to move. The first sign came from the southern wetlands. The fish vanished overnight. Water remained clear, yet life seemed to avoid it. Birds would circle high above, but refused to land. The crocodiles slipped away without a sound. When scouts finally ventured to the edge of the marsh, they felt it a low pressure, subtle but invasive. Thoughts became heavy. Anger rose without cause. Even simple decisions felt exhausting. This place drains your resolve, one scout reported back. It doesn't attack you, it erodes you. Rafiki listened, his grip tightening on his staff. The echo is learning, he said, his voice low. It wasn't feeding on fear anymore, it was feeding on doubt. Kion felt it next. While on patrol, the roar of the elders flickered unexpectedly. Didn't surge with power, nor did it fully obey his command. It just slipped, like sand through a clenched paw. He stopped walking. What if I can't protect them next time? The thought came unbidden, a whisper in his own mind. The roar pulsed weakly in response. Kion sat down hard, his breathing suddenly fast and shallow. Later, he admitted it to his father. I didn't hesitate, because I was afraid, Kion said, looking at his paws. I hesitated because I wasn't sure I should act. Simba studied his son, a new kind of concern in his eyes. That hesitation isn't weakness, Kion, he said gently. But you can't let it paralyze you either. Kion looked up. How do I know the difference? Simba didn't answer right away. Because, if he was honest, he didn't fully know himself. I swear. A lion named Kivali faced resistance of a different kind. He had chosen a new path for his pride, one of negotiation instead of domination. But some had grown restless. They missed the simple clarity of rule by might. Restraint felt like surrender. You've dulled our fire, one of his lions accused him. Kivali did not deny it. I've learned to aim it, he replied calmly. That night, several lions left his pride. They didn't threaten him. They simply walked away into the darkness. Kivali let them go. It hurt more than any battle, but he did not call them back. And far beneath the land, in the deep places of the world, the echo observed it all. Not with anger, but with fascination. A fire being tamed. Power being questioned, unity. Imperfect but chosen freely. This world was becoming resistant. So the echo adjusted its strategy once again. It did not rise. It did not strike. It whispered. Across the Pride Lands and beyond, small misunderstandings began to sharpen. Words were misheard. Benign intentions were suddenly questioned. Old, half-forgotten stories resurfaced, retold with sharper, more accusatory edge. A border dispute that had been settled flared up again, not over water this time, but over trust. A young lion accused another of manipulating trade routes. There was no proof, only a growing cloud of suspicion. The argument escalated with frightening speed. Before claws could meet flesh, Kiara arrived. She didn't command or decree. She asked questions. and she patiently uncovered the truth. A simple seasonal shift in animal migrations had caused the disruption, not sabotage. The conflict dissolved, but the damage lingered in the air. That shouldn't have happened, Kiara admitted later to Nala. Not so fast. Anyway, Nala nodded, her expression wise. That's the danger of a world built on choice. It requires constant care. Chores could heal, but it could also fracture, quietly and from within. Simba felt the strain deepening across the lands. It wasn't a dramatic crisis, but something more insidious. He climbed to the peak of Pride Rock one evening, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast, dark sky. Rafiki joined him, silent for a long time. The echo cannot rule this world as it once did. Fields, Mandrill said finally, his voice cutting through the quiet. So it seeks something else. What? Simba asked, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. Rafiki's eyes seemed to reflect the starlight. Exhaustion. The realization settled on Simba, heavy as a boulder. The Echo's new plan was brilliant in its cruelty. A world constantly negotiating with itself, constantly questioning and re-evaluating, could grow tired. A tired world makes mistakes, and mistakes create openings for darkness to seep back in. What do we do? Simba asked, the weight of it all pressing down on him. Rafiki smiled, a faint, mysterious smile. The hardest thing of all. Simba waited. We teach them how to rest. The idea seemed almost laughable at first. Rest. In the face of such a subtle, pervasive threat. But the more he thought about it, the more profound it became. In the weeks that followed, Simba began to encourage pauses. He championed safe seasons, where disputes were set aside. He organized shared migrations, where prides moved together, not for strategy, but for companionship. Times where no decisions had to be forced, no borders had to be tested. At first, some prides resisted. It felt counterintuitive, like lowering their guard. But then, something began to soften. The land itself seemed to respond. The grass grew thicker where conflict had eased. The great herds moved with less panic. Even the air felt lighter. Deep below, the echo recoiled. Not violently, but with a sense of unease. This was new. This was unexpected. A world that could slow itself down deliberately. A world that refused to be rushed into fracture. It was a defense the Echo hadn't anticipated, but it was far from finished. The whispers hadn't stopped, and the long game had only just begun. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more tailies from the Pride Lands.